Appreciate you guys being here. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Nikicia, Kevin Garcia with Fight Hype. So, obviously, today or this Saturday, July 20th, was the date that many people had reserved for the Mike Tyson fight. Things happened, those plans changed. Do you have any concern at all, obviously leading this promotion or being part of the leadership of the promotion, as far as Jake losing this fight, jeopardizing the Tyson fight?
Absolutely, it's a concern and one that we thought about when he decided he wanted to stay on July 20th. But it was, I think, 5.5 months from that date to November 15th. And in the fight game, anything can happen in that time period. It doesn't have to be an injury. It could be any number of factors. So when Jake said he wanted to fight, that was the right decision to make. And I feel confident about what he's going to do in the ring on Saturday night.
Now, when that was tabled, when that conversation came up and Jake says, hey, I want to fight July 20th, we got this possible Mike Perry fight, were you against it? Did you try to talk him out of it?
No, I loved it. I loved it because it continues to show that he's willing to fight anyone, right? No matter the risk. The amount of courage that this guy has 10 fights in, the amount of success he's had to constantly put it on the line, it's what I admire most about him. So I was fully for it. It's great to see the MMA pundits talking about this is a step too far. Jake is going to finally lose. This is a mistake. And then after the fact, they're going to go back to making excuses again. But I feel it's a fantastic fight for the fans.
A little bit of a different topic, but something that certainly you'd be related to, and that's promotion, right? So Nate Diaz, Masvidal, they fought. That fight went on, Nate Diaz won. And soon after, Nate Diaz is claiming that he was shorted $9 million by Fan Mio. As a promoter, one, can you speak to your thoughts on it? And two, how does that even happen?
Listen, when you're dealing with a new promoter, you always want to ensure that the funds are in escrow, right? When I look back to Jake's fights at Triller at the time, we made sure the funds were in escrow and were secured in advance of the fight. I think, Nate and Jorge did an amazing job. I think they did 6 press conferences, which is unprecedented to see, especially from Nate Diaz, who doesn't like to do press conferences. So they did what they needed to do. The demand wasn't there on the pay-per-view, and obviously now there's a debate or, a lawsuit on him getting paid what he's due, but it's just a tough situation.
While we're on the business subject, Tampa, you were here before.
Yes.
And sold a lot of tickets. What do you anticipate for a crowd, for a live gate?
I feel great, man. I'll tell you this. I think we'll have 14 to 15,000 people in the building. We'll have sold more than Shakur Stevenson just sold in his hometown. We'll have sold more than Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney just sold in New York. And we did this in 4.5 weeks with no press conference, with no planning. That shows you the power of Jake Paul. And I also have to give credit to Mike Perry. He's been a phenomenal promoter throughout this process.
And along those same lines, wherever Jake has fought, it seems like tickets move. It doesn't matter what part of the country, right?
Yeah, look, I'll be honest. This event, it's probably been a lower average ticket price than what we've done in the past. Most of Jake's events, the VIP sell out almost immediately. I think that's a function of if anyone's from Florida, a lot of people are out of town who can afford to be out of town in the summer. And so that's been slower. But other than that, everywhere he goes, he's setting records. He's filling the house up, and the energy is unbelievable.
Maybe a generation ago, there might not be a women's fight as a co-main event. Just what is, having one of the best of all time to do it and a Tampa local on a co-main event of a fight of this magnitude, how important is that for the sport?
Well, it's important to Jake and I. When we set up MVP, we had 2 priorities. One of them was bringing awareness to women's boxing, and I think we've done that over the past 2.5 years. And Amanda Serrano is more than a woman boxer. She's one of the greatest boxers of all time. This is her 50th fight, and she has done things that men from Puerto Rico, the Trinidads, the Miguel Cottos haven't done. So it's important, but it's due. It's expected. It has to be the case, right? When you look at Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, same thing. Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano has to be on that card to give women the platform that they deserve.
Let me ask you, you've been with Jake now for a couple of years in business.
4 years, yeah.
What can you tell us or the public that we might not know about Jake Paul? What have you learned, compared to what we just see on social media and things like that?
He's the most professional boxer in professional boxing. And people doubt that he's a professional boxer, right? Nothing comes close to Jake Paul in the business of professional boxing, and he's 27 years old. Just think about that. He's been in this sport for 4 years. He's sold out arenas. He's headlined countless pay-per-views. More importantly, he's brought in other fighters and lifted them up and used his platform to push them. Whether it's women's boxing, whether it's young boxers, whether it's USA boxing. He's leaving here and going to Paris to help young American boxers get exposure. He's renovated 5 gyms since March in Puerto Rico. 2 more will be done in the next 2 months. 7 gyms that he's put his own money to renovate. Nothing comes to close Jake Paul unequivocally 4, 5, 6 years into their career in terms of what someone's done for the sport of boxing. And he needs to be respected for that.
MVP is one of the biggest promotions now, but also one of the newest. What can you attribute to the success?
Look, I wouldn't say we're one of the biggest. I hope to say that we're one of the most innovative, one of the most exciting, and we have, in my mind, the face of boxing. I don't care what anyone else says. No one does what this young kid does, and he's 4 years in. So imagine what he does 3, 4 years from now. And when he says he's going to be champion in 2 years, I have no doubt about it.
Nick, he said, a little while ago we were talking about Nate Diaz, Masvidal, and I asked Jake this question yesterday because he's talked about his desire to maybe take on one of those guys in MMA. So I said, look, it seems like the impediment, the obstacle is your relationship with Dana White. Could you see yourself mending that? And he said, yeah. Do you see that being something that could happen, Dana White doing business with MVP to make an MMA fight with a Nate Diaz or a Masvidal?
Absolutely not in MMA, because Jake and I are part of the PFL, and any fight that Jake does will be in the PFL. In terms of what Jake said, I think he was very clear that if the UFC was paying fighters the appropriate share of revenue, which it can do and can afford to do, he'd be more than happy to sit down with Dana. The two of them have a lot more in common than differences, but the biggest difference is that Jake Paul puts the fighters first.
There you go. One other thing, you just mentioned a little while ago, Shakur Stevenson's fight, so I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. What did you think about Shakur Stevenson's fight? He's caught a lot of backlash for his fighting style, not exciting the fans.
I think, look, he's an extremely talented boxer, right, who is now starting to take more of an active role in promoting himself. And I think over the next, 2 to 4 fights, he's going to have some very big, exciting fights on the horizon. And that's when you're going to see if Shakur Stevenson can rise to the occasion. But I have no doubt that people will continue to be interested in what he does. You saw the numbers on ESPN, one of the best numbers they've had in a long time. So the demand is there. The narrative is not what you want. I often say we're in an environment where it's shock and awe. If you're not shocking and awing people, they're complaining, because it's all about what's on the internet, what's on social, what's going viral. And his style of fighting doesn't necessarily fit that, but you're going to appreciate his skill over time.
Nikisa, what's your thoughts on the Silva body fight here? Is this underrated in your opinion?
I don't think it's underrated. I think it speaks to that young man's confidence, courage, willingness to step up. The Floyd Schofield fight was a great fight. We were going to put that on Netflix. We agreed to put it on this card, and then Floyd got injured. Floyd is 17-0 with, I think, 11 knockouts, and he's a good fighter, great fighter. And then when he fell out, we're putting in a guy who's 16-0, top 10 ranked by multiple sanctioning bodies, who has more knockouts. And H2O and his dad were like, yes, we want this fight. We want to show the people, what we've been doing, why we're the top prospect at that weight class.
You keep on talking about Paul, but how much does he really mean to MVP in your opinion? Can you expound on that even more?
Jake Paul?
Yes.
I think, he means a lot to the sport of boxing and obviously MVP. But I always say Jake's biggest impact is by far going to be outside of the ring than inside of the ring. He has a bigger platform than any boxer that exists. He has a bigger platform than any promoter that's out there. And he's going to use that to build the stars that we have on our roster over time.
Back to Amanda Serrano.
Yes.
She could not fight in March. And how did you weigh taking a risk, to whatever degree this will be a risk, when the Katie Taylor fight is obviously a massive fight? How did you
She
weigh
was
that?
supposed to fight in March, and the night of the fight she couldn't fight.
Right.
That's the sport of boxing, right? Conor McGregor was coming back after 3 years with 74 doctors and therapy and this and that, and his toe got injured, right? Tyson Fury was going to have the undisputed match. In the sparring matches, I got cut open, had to get delayed. So you can't think about 5 months from now in this sport. You have to take the opportunity that exists right in front of you, and that's what she's doing. She wants to stay active. Katie required her to go up to 140 pounds. So it's a very smart decision for Amanda to say, let me get used to fighting at 140 again. I did it once, sorry about that. I did it once 5 years ago. Now let me see how I feel at that weight.
One more question.
Back to Puerto Rico?
Sorry?
Do you plan to go to Puerto Rico?
Yeah, look, this is the ideal path for Amanda Serrano. Is she wins on Saturday night. Her and Katie Taylor fight in November. She beats Katie Taylor, right? But she beat her the first time, but she lost on the scorecards. They have a rematch, and then she has a retirement fight in Puerto Rico.
Last question.
Ashton Still, you talked about that a second ago. I interviewed him about a week ago.
H2O?
Yes, sir. H2O, to be specific, for anybody who doesn't know. But he spoke to me about a week ago, and he stated that he had a bad feeling about the Floyd Schofield fight actually happening down the line. Do you have any thoughts, or are you in line with Ashton and his apprehension as to whether or not that fight actually occurs?
I think it's a matter of these young fighters not just having the courage, but having the counsel that it makes sense to do these fights at this point of your career. Too often in boxing, the council around the fighter is saying, we got to get you to 22-0, 28-0, 30-0 before we have this big fight. People don't want to see your O go. So I think Floyd's a young, confident man. It's about the people around him having that confidence to put it all on the line.
Got it. Nikisa, any thoughts at all? Not boxing related, but a week ago in our country, our former president, you know, there was an assassination attempt on his life. Any thoughts on that at all?
This is about boxing.
There
not
you
about
go.
Politics.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.